In this video, I'm going to discuss one of the biggest questions in sports performance. That is, how do we get our strength training adaptations to transfer to our sport? What's up, YouTubers, and welcome back to our channel. This question has been debated for a long time, and there's no single answer. In this video, I'll use the most up-to-date, non-climbing exercise science to try and better understand this question as it applies to finger strength training. If you need to become more familiar with my work and have yet to see the two previous YouTube videos, I'd suggest you head on over and watch those first. Be sure to watch the entire video. There's a lot of unavoidable jargon discussed to help you better understand the goals, the physiology, and the multiple options for finger strength training. Consider that a prerequisite to this video. In the first video, we discussed the specific neural and structural adaptations that happen with a strength training program. The adaptations we should expect to see off the wall are increases in muscular recruitment, increases in muscle hypertrophy, increases in lateral force transmission, and connective tissue stiffness. In the second video, we demonstrate multiple methods for gaining these adaptations. As shown in that video, hanging from a fingerboard, pulling on a strain gauge, or lifting a block off the ground are all viable methods for strength training the hands and fingers. As long as the intensity is high, the fatigue is kept low, and the exercise progresses, it shouldn't matter which method you use. Neither of them is more or less specific for rock climbing. Remember, the adaptations we gain from strength training are specific, not what the exercise looks like. That's why there are so many success stories about different finger strength training methods, because for the most part, they're all doing the same thing. They all provide a controlled load to the fingers and hands much greater than the athlete experiences on the climbing wall. In this video, we are going to highlight the primary limitation of all finger strength training methods, and that limitation is the coordination adaptation. If you recall from the first video, gaining coordination with an exercise is the first necessary step from which all others will follow. You can only get stronger once you're coordinated at the movement. This is why all athletes, including climbers, use stable and less complicated movements to gain strength. Stripping away the complexity of a sport allows a more targeted load to a specific muscle group. It should be obvious to any climber who has trained their fingers that hanging on a flat edge, even if it's small, is relatively easy to learn. That is after they've developed the connective tissue stiffness to tolerate it. The same applies to the other previously finger strength training methods, which is why the finger strength training numbers go up so quickly. But that's precisely why we shouldn't expect those gains to transfer directly to climbing harder grades. The coordination gained from the strength training stimulus differs from that needed on the climbing wall. Even though there are many flat edges outside, the intensity, the hold depth, the rate of force development, the body position, and the finger joint angles are different on the climbing wall than with any off-the-wall finger strength training method. We cannot get directly below or above every hold as with strength training when climbing. And this is no surprise to most of you watching this video, and I hope you're all thinking the same thing, and that is to climb more. And I totally agree, but with a few important caveats. The fallacy that I see with only climbing for finger strength gains is this. It assumes that as difficulty increases, it only reflects an increased difficulty to the fingers, which is rarely the case. Indeed, the holds can get smaller, but as the difficulty increases, more often does the whole body power output or the distance between small holds. To climb more complex problems and grades, the athlete needs to become more efficient in all aspects of their climbing, not just their fingers. Completing complex problems reflects a movement competence change, not an increase in strength necessarily. The ability to hang on smaller holds when climbing is likely more dependent on your lower extremity's ability to allow the optimization of each hold, not produce more force on it with your fingers. That is, less a finger strength limiter than a hip and shoulder mobility limiter. It's more about getting your center of mass in the most efficient position possible. Regardless of the method used, proper strength training should increase your ability to gain new competence through more intense and frequent climbing practice. That's why all coaches prescribe more intentional movement practice on the climbing wall. But over time, we have left out the intentional practice of the fingers and hands and instead have created finger strength training protocols that try to match the climbing demands with too much focus on the external load. As we get more skilled with climbing, we learn to apply enough force to perform moves, intending to use the minimum possible by having better body position and footwork. Repeatedly applying too much force on the fingers or over-gripping is rarely an efficient strategy. In addition, when the climbing grades get harder, let's say in a limit bouldering session, the forces need to be high, but the rate of that force is more limiting. This strategy tends to plateau relatively quickly. It's only possible to continuously increase rate of force development by getting stronger first. Strength precedes power, always. So, what I'm recommending is simple. To get the strength gains off the wall to transfer to rock climbing, athletes should have regular practice sessions focused on the coordination adaptation of the hands and fingers. Think of it as the opposite of what climbers currently do to increase body tension. It's common for coaches to prescribe foothold size reductions for the athlete to put more pressure through the core and toes. We can reverse engineer this idea and apply it to grabbing smaller and harder holds. In this context, the goal is to remove the complexity and power output of regular hard climbing and focus more on the difficulty of the hands, chest, and midsection. We're blending a minimal edge and repeater protocol and performing it on the climbing wall instead of a hangboard. The goal is to ascend the wall on difficult holds relative to the individual athlete. This stimulus provides that extra coordination adaptation that the fingerboard cannot. The rationale for keeping the power down is to ensure that each hold is optimized in its direction and grip position. In this context, varied, difficult holds and wall angles are preferred. This workout will create fatigue in the fingers and serve as an additional method to build hypertrophy and stamina in the forearms. Additionally, this climbing drill is the best method for creating positional stiffness in the fingers, hands, and wrist connective tissues. Contrary to making power moves on small holds with a high rate of force, the athlete will have more time to grab and hang on each hold while exploring foot options. Additionally, better footholds and body positioning allow more consistent access to harder holds than normal climbing or bouldering. Remember, the goal is to become coordinated at grabbing smaller and harder holds while better positioning the body on the climbing wall, not to send a technical boulder problem. The easiest way to conceptualize this drill is by performing it like a repeater set. One set up the wall equals around 6 to 10 total hand moves in around 40 to 60 seconds. You'll spend approximately 5 to 7 seconds on each hold and hand move, followed by a brief rest between moves. 3 to 5 sets after your warm-up before an indoor climbing session. Physiologically, it's the equivalent of a 5 to 7 second on, 1 second off, 3 to 5 repetition repeater on small edges. If you're outside, this is the equivalent of pulling on your project and holding the positions to prime the fingers more intentionally. As for the difficulty and volume, that all depends on the training and climbing age of the individual. I've prescribed this workout as the sole indoor climbing session for highly experienced climbers with good success. They would spend 2 to 4 weeks, twice weekly, during a strength training phase. I suggest using a large edge off the wall to gain recruitment, and use this method as the climbing session to gain coordination on holds specific to their projects. In that context, we can precisely match the wall angle and the average hold type to ensure those holds feel more manageable when climbing at a regular power output. Conversely, doing that much volume on an athlete with less training age would cause too much stress on the fingers and annular pulleys. For athletes looking to get into finger strength training or supplement their off-the-wall training method for a better transfer, using this methodology for 3 to 5 sets each day before climbing should be enough of a stimulus. It's incredible how quickly you'll feel strong on more challenging climbing holds. Let's pause and highlight that last comment. I said, it's incredible how quickly you'll feel strong on more challenging climbing holds. That's because coordination should happen quickly, especially if you've been training recruitment off the wall. From my experience testing climbers, most climbers don't lack recruitment as much as they lack coordination on smaller holds. Exposing your fingers to more challenging holds on a spray wall, a system board, or a regular climbing wall more frequently will work wonders for any climber. Some of you are likely thinking that what I'm describing is not the same coordination as hard climbing. And you're right, it's not. What I'm describing is a low-power version of climbing on holds that you need to be coordinated on when you try and climb at your limit. Once you have increased recruitment and stiffness off the wall, and gain the coordination adaptation on the wall, you only have to increase the power output of the hand moves. And voila, your power output, and thus contact strength, should increase automatically. Remember, the only difference between strength and power is the rate of force development. If we progressively train the fast twitch fibers with strength at a low volume off the wall and gain coordination on the wall, we only need to start climbing at a typical power output again. Think about it as turning the lights off the tension board for a few weeks, only to turn them back on to increase contact strength for a couple months. If we leave the lights on, we do too much volume or spend less time on small holds to make new strength adaptations. To end this video, I'm going to make a quick summary of my recommendations for all 3 videos. First, increases in finger strength are not due to one thing. The athlete first must get coordinated and progressively overload the movement to gain additional recruitment, hypertrophy, and connective tissue stiffness. These adaptations must happen off the climbing wall about twice weekly for 3 to 6 weeks, pending the athlete's training age. Which method you choose should directly reflect your testing numbers and personal preference. If your upper body pull strength is a weakness, try lifting something off the ground and train pulling with a more targeted exercise. If your finger and pull strength are both your strong suit, try the curling down or up method to gain those small increases in muscular recruitment. Whichever method you choose, do it regularly as part of your warm-up routine each day you climb. After your fingers are warmed up and ready to try hard, do 3 to 4 sets of the coordination climbing drill before your daily indoor climbing session. This is also a great time to work your hip mobility on the climbing wall as you practice getting below each hold as best you can. Remember, the difficulty must be relative to your strength and training age. Spray walls and system boards work well for this drill as long as the holds are more challenging than the ones you regularly grab onto during your climbing session. The goal is to spend time exploring multiple grip types from multiple angles with more control. Adjustable walls provide another method of progressive overload. If you are an advanced climber, you might need a higher volume and a more targeted stimulus than a handful of sets. In that case, you could do twice weekly sessions at 6 to 12 sets per session with 3 to 5 minutes of rest between sets at a targeted wall angle. In this example, you could do supplemental strength training workouts between your sets on the climbing wall. Remember, you have to reduce the average climbing volume to ensure you're getting the appropriate recovery between sessions. Once again, thanks for your attention and watching the entire video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. In the next video, I will explore how to test and train the rate of force development with the Tindeq Progressor. So make sure you follow to get notified. As a thank you for watching this entire video to the end, I'm offering a 15% discount on any of my new client consultation services. If you're a climber with a pain complaint or looking to get more targeted education and programming, use the code RECRUITMENT at my website store. I'm only offering 5 of these, so grab one quick. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.